courts does not rest on ceremony or title. It rests on fidelity to law, the giving of reasons, the enforcement of constitutional limits, and the willingness to hold power to account. Judge President Jappie and continued to answer the call of judicial service after his retirement. He contributed to judicial conduct processes and served as chairperson of a judicial conduct tribunal. In doing so, he supported a principle essential to the legitimacy of the judiciary, and that is judicial accountability. Some lives are remembered in reported judgments and formal appointments. Others are remembered in institutions that remain steadier because someone accepted responsibility for them, and in colleagues who better understand the demands of office because of the example they witnessed. May it therefore be said of this life of service that he did not place himself above the law, but gave his years to its keeping. He did not seek prestige for himself, but devoted his life to help keep the doors of justice open. And when the burden of office was placed upon him, he shouldered that responsibility with courage and integrity. To Judge Soraya Hassim, JP Jappie's family, and the entire families that are here extended, the heads of court extend their deepest condolences. We recognize that behind a long public career lies the support and sacrifice of a family. We thank you for sharing him with the judiciary and with the people of South Africa. Judge President Jappie's term of office ended a few years ago, and his life recently. But the value of faithful judicial service does not end with retirement or death. It becomes part of the institutional memory of the courts and part of the standard against which those who follow must measure themselves. As heads of court and on behalf of my leader, Chief Justice Maya, we say, may Judge President Jappie's contribution to justice be remembered with gratitude, and may his legacy live on as a pillar of constitutionalism in this country. Thank you, JP Poyashwati.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Justice Mlambo. I now call upon the Deputy Minister of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, Honorable Andries Nel MP, to pay tribute on behalf of government.
Okay. Program Director, Honorable Judge President Toba Poyo Dluati, Deputy Chief Justice Dunstan Mlambo and Justice Leona Tron, Judges President Zinat Karelse and Aubrey Ledwaba, and retired Judge President Vuga Chabalala, Judge President, Deputy Judge President Zaba Nkosi, members of the Judiciary, the National Prosecuting Authority and Legal Aid South Africa, representatives of the organized legal profession, distinguished guests, but most importantly, Judge Soraya Hassim and the Japa family. Today we gather in this court not merely to remember a distinguished judge. We gather to honor a life that reminds us why justice matters. We gather to honor a man whose quiet dignity, unwavering integrity, and profound humanity strengthen public confidence in justice itself. Judge President Achmat Jappie belonged to that remarkable generation of South African jurists who witnessed the law in two very different forms. They knew the law when it was used to divide and oppress. They helped shape the law that now unites and helps us free the potential of each person. They experienced a legal system that denied rights. They helped build one dedicated to protecting them. In remembering Judge President Jappie, we therefore remember something larger than one distinguished judicial career. We remember the journey of our republic. This year, South Africa celebrates the 30 years since the adoption of our democratic constitution We do so under the theme, one constitution, one nation, reflect, renew, recommit. 30 years ago, we made a fundamental national choice. We chose constitutional supremacy over parliamentary sovereignty. We chose human dignity over racial domination. We chose equality over exclusion. We chose accountability over arbitrary power. And we chose an independent judiciary as a guardian of those values. That choice changed South Africa forever. But constitutions do not defend themselves. Rights do not enforce themselves. The rule of law does not preserve itself. People do. Women and men of courage and integrity. Judge President Jappie can be counted amongst those. His journey itself reflected the injustice of apartheid. Born in Port Elizabeth in 1954, he encountered barriers deliberately designed to limit the ambitions of young South Africans classified by race. Even the choice of where to study law was determined by apartheid legislation. Yet determination found a path where discrimination erected obstacles. Through perseverance and a measure of ingenuity, he entered the University of Durban-Westville and began the legal education that would shape the next 4 decades of his life. His story reminds us that talent is universal, even though, sadly, opportunity was not. Democracy has sought to change precisely that. At the Durban bar, he quickly earned respect as an able advocate. Yet his significance lay not simply in professional success. During the turbulent 1980s, he defended political activists at a time when many faced prosecution under unjust laws. He understood something fundamental. The law can become an instrument of oppression, but in the hands of principled lawyers and independent judges, it can become an instrument of freedom. That conviction shaped the judge he later became. When he was appointed to the bench in 1998, South Africa's constitutional democracy was still young. The judiciary itself was undergoing and continues to undergo profound transformation. Judge President Jappie became one of the generation entrusted with giving practical meaning to the Constitution. He did so not through flamboyance, he did so through excellence, not through self-promotion, but through painstaking scholarship. His colleagues remember a judge who was courteous but firm, patient but disciplined, humble but authoritative, one who insisted that every litigant be heard, one who understood that justice is measured not by outcomes, but by the fairness, or not only by outcomes, but the fairness of the process. Those qualities explain why the tributes paid to him have been remarkably consistent. Chief Justice Meyer described him as a jurist who served with honor and integrity. This division remembered him as a gentleman, a mentor, and a thoroughly decent human being. Practitioners remembered that no one left his courtroom believing they had not received a fair hearing. No judicial officer could hope for a finer epitaph. Judge President Jappie also understood something that is sometimes overlooked. The Constitution is implemented not only through judgments, it is implemented through institutions. He knew that missing files delay justice, that failing infrastructure weakens justice, that administrative dysfunction denies justice. When he became Judge President, he confronted these problems directly because he understood that constitutional rights become meaningful only when courts function effectively, professionally, and independently. That insight remains profoundly relevant today. Today, South Africa faces challenges that test the resilience of our constitutional order. We confront organized crime that seeks to infiltrate state institutions. The work of the Madlanga Commission reminds us that criminal networks do not merely threaten public safety. They seek to undermine the very institutions on which our constitutional democracy depends. There are allegations touching institutions across our criminal justice system, including, sadly, the judiciary itself. Such allegations must never be ignored, nor must they be assumed to be true without due process. It requires independent investigation, evidence, accountability, above all, fidelity to the rule of law. That is the standard Judge President Jappie upheld throughout his life. We are also confronted by the scourge of political violence. Every councillor assassinated, every municipal official threatened, every prosecutor intimidated, every witness or whistleblower silenced, every attack upon a judicial officer is an attack upon constitutional democracy itself. Violence can never become an alternative to the law. The answer to injustice is justice. The answer to criminality is law enforcement. The answer to violence is the rule of law. South Africa is also engaged in an important national conversation about migration. Many South Africans have genuine concerns about employment, unemployment, public services, security, and the enforcement of immigration laws. President Ramaphosa has rightly recognized those concerns as legitimate, while making it equally clear that they must be addressed through lawful state action, not through vigilantism, intimidation, or xenophobic violence. And that distinction is fundamental. That is the discipline constitutional democracy demands of all of us. Judge President Jappie spent his life demonstrating that difficult questions must always be answered through law rather than through anger, prejudice, or force. He also understood and lived the beautiful and profound words of the Holy Quran in Surat Al-Hujurat 49:13. O mankind, we created you from a single pair of male and female and made you into nations and tribes, that ye may know each other, not that ye may despise each other. Perhaps the greatest challenge today is one less visible but equally serious. It is the erosion of public confidence and trust. Recent research tells us that too many South Africans have become less satisfied with the way democracy is working. Confidence in public institutions has declined. Across Africa, many citizens question whether justice is equally available to the powerful and the poor alike. These findings should concern every one of us, because democracy ultimately rests not upon constitutions alone. It rests upon trust. Trust that elections matter, trust that parliament matters, trust that government acts lawfully, trust that courts remain independent, trust that justice belongs equally to everyone. Judge President Jappie understood that every fair hearing strengthened that trust. Every reasoned and timeously delivered judgment strengthened that trust. Every litigant treated with dignity strengthened that trust. That is why judicial independence remains one of the defining constitutional questions of our time. An independent judiciary is not a privilege enjoyed by just judges. It is a guarantee enjoyed by the people. Without independent courts, rights become promises without remedies. Without independent courts, constitutional democracy becomes aspiration rather than reality. Without independent courts, democracy itself is diminished. Government, therefore, remains firmly committed to strengthening the institutional independence of the judiciary, while at the same time ensuring that trust is maintained through appropriate accountability. We remain committed to the establishment of a single judiciary. We remain committed to a judiciary-led court administration model. These are not administrative reforms. They are constitutional imperatives. They honor the vision of those who, like Judge President Jappie, devoted their lives to building courts worthy of the Constitution. President Nelson Mandela reminded the judges of our newly established constitutional court that their authority comes from the people through the Constitution. But President Jappie never forgot that truth. He exercised authority with humility because he understood its source. He exercised authority with courage because he understood its purpose. He exercised authority with restraint because he understood its limits. And he exercised authority with humanity because he understood the people for whom the law exists to serve. Today, we bid farewell to a distinguished jurist, but we also renew a promise to preserve the independence of our courts, a promise to strengthen the institutions of justice, a promise to defend the rule of law, a promise to ensure that every South African, regardless of race, gender, wealth, language, or place of birth, can enter a courtroom with confidence that they will receive justice according to the law. That, I believe, is the memorial Judge President Achmat Jappie would have wanted. Not a monument of stone, not words spoken for a single morning, but institutions of integrity, courts that function, judges who are fearless, justice that is accessible, a constitution that lives not only in our law reports, but in the daily experience of the people. May his example continue to inspire and guide us, and may his memory continue to strengthen the republic he served so faithfully. Judge President, I hope I'm not being out of order, but I would like, with your permission, to ask that in honor of his memory, that we rise and recite the preamble to the Constitution of the Republic. We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. United in our diversity. We therefore, through our freely elected representatives, adopt this Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic, so as to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. Lay the foundations for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by law. Improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person, and build a united and democratic South Africa, able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. May God protect our people. Nkosi sikelele Afrika. Morena buluka sichaba sa Jesu. Khotsi in South Africa. God bless South Africa. Muzimu pachucheza Africa. Osika tikisa Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I know your speech would not be complete without that. It's your signature. And I think It's quite important because it reminds us of where we come from and where we are. We now call upon, I don't know if I will be in trouble for saying this, but retired Judge Rashid Farhed. If I am in trouble, I am protected because his wife is here, so he cannot do anything to me. Judge Farhed.
Judge President, we will speak later. We have a very full program today, and so I trust that I will be forgiven for dispensing with protocol. Second, although I'm this early in the lineup of today's speakers, there is already to come from what I say a fair degree of repetition. For that, I make no apology, but I also pity those that follow me. Achmat Jappie, advocate, judge, mentor, quiet champion of justice, was my friend. A friendship that dates back in excess of half a century. And although I've asked to be forgiven for my failure to observe protocol, I will recognize another of my friends today. A friendship that dates back not so long, but in excess of a quarter of a century, Judge Soraya Hassan. She was his wife, his friend, his companion, and sadly now his widow. In what follows, I intend, as he would have it, to refer to him as Japs or Achi, as I always did. And I will refer to her as Soraya, as I know she would want that. My brief today is not to speak of my friendships with Achi and Soraya, but it is owing to those friendships that the Judge President has chosen not to deliver this piece herself, as was her right, but instead to bestow upon me the singular honor of speaking to you on behalf of the KwaZulu-Natal bench. Achi died at a Durban hospital on the 22nd of April, 2026, after a short illness. Writing recently of Leonora van den Heever, judge of the Supreme Court of Appeal within the Appellate Division, Justice Johan Gichler said that his readers will note, and I quote, "They might have noticed one or other of the flurry of tributes published about her. The number, breadth, and particularly the tenor of these laudatory utterances were remarkable. Fulsome statements on behalf of the legal profession and all three branches of government vied with one another in singing her praises and enumerating her outstanding personal attributes and professional qualities. Undoubtedly, the accolades and adulatory eulogies were sincerely meant." That observation, friends, could sit just as comfortably about the many pieces written and published about Achi. Because many have said so much, what I say here today unavoidably draws sometimes deliberately and sometimes unknowingly from all that has gone before. Japs was 2 months shy of his 72nd birthday. He served on the bench for nearly 3 decades and left behind a legacy defined not by fanfare, but by fairness, integrity, and an unshakable commitment to the rule of law. As has been said, He was born in Port Elizabeth on the 21st of June 1954. Achie spent his early years there at the Hindu primary school before his family relocated to Durban. He completed his schooling, as did Judge President Carlsa, at the Beshe Secondary School, Beshe College as we know it, matriculated in 1972. As has also been said in our earlier statement and by Deputy Minister today, the racial laws of the apartheid era dictated that he would have had to study in the Cape. But were it not for a fortuitous loophole, he elected to study Hindu and Islamic law offered only at the University of Durban-Westville, and that's how he got to study there. He secured an exemption to do that and graduated in 1976 with a BA law and in 1978 with an LLB. He served his pupillage under Mark Harcourt at the Durban Bar and was admitted as an advocate in 1979. And he quickly developed a busy practice. During the turbulent 1980s, as has been said, he devoted considerable energy to defending the political activists facing prosecution, particularly in the Eastern and Northern Capes. That reflected moral convictions that would define his entire career. And he also gave time to serve on the Bar Council. Appointed to this division, then known as the Natal Provincial Division, on the 1st of May 1998, he arrived at a formative moment in our democratic history. He took to judicial life with natural ease, efficient, polite, firm, and always fair. As we have said, those who appeared before him recall that no one, whether counsel or litigant, left his courtroom feeling hard done by. His path took him through the Labour Appeal Court, where he developed a flair for clear reasoning, and those were in many technically demanding disputes. And in early 2015, he served as an acting justice of the Constitutional Court. Chief Justice Mandisa Meyer described him as someone who earned the respect of colleagues, legal practitioners, and court users alike. And that was for his integrity and deep knowledge of the law. He was appointed Deputy Judge President of this division on the 7th of February 2013, and he elevated to the high office of this division as Judge President on the 1st of June 2015. As has been said, the division then was defined as much by administrative strain as by legal complexity. As Judge President, he treated the machinery of the court as inseparable from justice itself. He pressed for better resourcing. He flagged systemic failures with candor. He famously noted in his JSC interview that the windows at the Durban High Court had not been cleaned in 15 years, and supported efforts to diversify the bench. His guiding principle was that the court had to work before it could be improved. Writing in the Daily Maverick, Herman Latergan noted that for nearly 3 decades on the bench, Achie was a stabilizing presence, a judge whose labor built through work that was careful, unshowy, and exact. In a judiciary sometimes pulled into public noise, he seemed to prefer the margins rather than the center. He spoke from the bench in a Zen-like manner, expected precision from those who appeared before him, and had little patience for performance disguised as argument. The case for him was not a stage. When he came to the bench in 1998, it was a moment when the legal order was still learning how to navigate its post-apartheid shape. Contemporaries described him as wary of easy legal certainty and alert to the way doctrine could harden into injustice when applied without reflection. As has been said, his path took him through the Labour Appeal Court, the clear reasoning there, and the Constitutional Court in 2015. But he remained conscious of the limits of judicial power. When later that year he became Judge President of this court, he led from the front. Those of us who worked under him knew that and saw that on a daily basis. He retired in 2021, leaving as he had worked, without ceremony. Knowing my friend as I do, he would not have wanted today, but we do this for us, for the division and for the country, as much as we do this for him and for Soraya. We proudly claimed Achi as one of us, that he was us and that we were him. But as was proper, we shared him with the people of this province and the people of this country. Retirement brought no withdrawal from public service. He continued to serve the bar on the National Bar Examinations Board, and a role he performed throughout his career on the bench. He also served as chairperson of judicial conduct tribunals when called upon, most notably findings of gross misconduct in 2 matters of former judges who will remain nameless. Through these interventions, he demonstrated that judicial accountability was not simply an institutional obligation, but a personal conviction. Those who knew Achi beyond the courtroom speak of a man of rare humility. Attorney Zain Fakhruddin of this province described him